The massive prison asteroid rotated slowly against the backdrop of a dying star, its crystalline surface reflecting pinpricks of light that seemed to mock the concept of hope. Deep within its most secure containment level, Jack Martinez pressed his cybernetic hand against the quantum-locked cell wall, feeling the microscopic vibrations that most beings would never perceive. 17 years of imprisonment had transformed him from a simple human cargo pilot into something far more extraordinary. The other prisoners, a collection of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals, watched him with a mixture of curiosity and growing terror. Beings from a dozen different species crowded the transparent observation walls of their own cells, their exotic physiologies pressed against the barriers. A six-limbed methane breather from the gas planets of the outer rim, a silicon-based life form that seemed to shimmer and shift, crystalline entities that looked more like living light than organic creatures. Jack's cell was different. Where others had standard quantum lock systems that prevented molecular manipulation, his containment used a triple redundant system designed specifically to neutralize human unpredictability. The Obsidian Consortium had learned the hard way that humans were not like other species. He closed his eyes, feeling the wall's molecular structure. Most would see a solid barrier, but Jack perceived it as a complex dance of energy and potential. His cybernetic implants, a result of an experimental program long forgotten, began to resonate at a frequency that most scanning systems couldn't detect. A low hum started, almost imperceptible at first. The methane breather in the adjacent cell took a step back, its multiple eyes widening with recognition. Something was happening. The wall began to change. Not crack, not break, but transform. Molecular bonds shifted, creating microscopic pathways that defied the fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics. Jack's breathing remained steady, his concentration absolute. "Impossible," muttered a crystalline guard outside, its translucent form flickering with confusion. Jack knew the truth. Nothing was impossible, only misunderstood. His backstory was a classified nightmare. Once a simple cargo pilot for deep space merchant routes, he had been caught in a corporate conflict that saw him framed, then deliberately placed in a facility designed to break the unbreakable. The Obsidian Consortium believed in absolute control, in systems that could predict and neutralize any potential threat. They had not anticipated Jack Martinez. The wall's surface began to ripple, like water disturbed by an unseen stone. Prisoners from various cells began to murmur, then shout. Some pressed themselves against the far walls of their cells, while others leaned forward with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Jack's cybernetic hand moved with precise, almost musical movements. Each touch was a complex algorithm, a conversation with the molecular structure of the wall itself. He wasn't breaking through, he was negotiating a passage. A hairline fracture appeared, then another. Not from brute force, but from a fundamental restructuring of the wall's quantum state. The methane breather spoke in its translated voice. "You will be destroyed for this." Jack Martinez smiled, a smile that spoke of patience, of a plan 17 years in the making. "No," he responded quietly. "I'm going to change everything." The first true crack appeared, not with a violent sound, but with a musical resonance that seemed to make the very fabric of reality pause and reconsider its fundamental rules. The escape was about to begin. Alarms erupted across the prison asteroid, their crystalline sound cutting through the artificial atmosphere like razor-sharp blades of light. The Obsidian Consortium's security systems came alive, a symphony of technological precision designed to neutralize any potential threat with absolute certainty. Jack Martinez moved with a calculated grace that defied conventional understanding. Each step was a complex calculation, a dance between human intuition and technological manipulation that left the station's most advanced tracking systems spinning in confusion. The elite guards converge, the quantum sentinels, legendary throughout the galaxy for their ability to phase through solid matter, to predict and neutralize threats before they could fully form. Their bodies were living crystals of pure energy, each one a weapon more advanced than entire planetary defense systems. But Jack was not running. He was performing. His improvised weapon, cobbled together from medical nanites and a discarded communication array, began to pulse with a frequency that seemed to make reality itself hesitate. The nanites were more than simple machines. They were an extension of his will, adaptive systems that responded to thoughts faster than electronic impulses could travel. A quantum sentinel materialized directly in front of him, its crystalline form shifting between solid and energy states. Standard protocol would demand immediate neutralization, but nothing about this moment was standard. Jack's cybernetic hand touched the air, and the communication array he'd modified began to sing, not with sound, but with a complex mathematical language that spoke directly to the fundamental communication protocols of the station's systems. The quantum sentinel froze. Around Jack, the prison's most secure corridors began to transform. Blast doors that should have been impenetrable flickered and reconfigured. Security protocols twisted in on themselves, creating impossible pathways that defied the station's original design. Impossible. A secondary system chirped, its AI struggling to comprehend the complete breakdown of its logic circuits. Jack knew the truth. Impossible was just a failure of imagination. His escape was more than a physical journey. It was a systematic deconstruction of the most advanced security system in the known galaxy. Each step rewrote the rules of technological interaction, turning the prison's own defenses into an elaborate mechanism of liberation. Prisoners washed from their cells, their various alien physiologies pressed against transparent barriers. Some screamed, some prayed, some simply watched in stunned silence as Jack Martinez turned the most secure facility in the galaxy into his personal playground. The methane breather from the previous cell, a being that had witnessed countless escape attempts, leaned forward. Its multiple eyes tracked Jack's impossible movement, recognizing something fundamental was changing. Quantum sentinels continued to materialize, their energy forms blending and shifting. They were the ultimate security measure, capable of existing in multiple states simultaneously, of predicting and neutralizing threats before they could fully form. Jack smiled. His cybernetic systems began to pulse, not with electronic signals, but with a complex adaptive language that spoke directly to the fundamental nature of technological systems. The station itself seemed to breathe with him, its most secure protocols becoming fluid, malleable. A blast door ahead transformed from an impenetrable barrier to a suggestion. Jack moved through it like water, leaving behind a trail of reconfigured systems and bewildered security protocols. This was not an escape. This was a demonstration. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. Karazin stood perfectly still, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lighting in a mesmerizing dance of color and shadow. She had been dispatched as the ultimate hunter, a living weapon of the Obsidian Consortium, designed to track and eliminate the most dangerous escapees in the galaxy. But something was fundamentally wrong with her mission. Jack Martinez moved through the station's secondary corridors with a fluidity that defied conventional understanding. Each step was a negotiation, a complex dialogue with the station's technological infrastructure that left tracking systems spinning in perpetual confusion. When their paths first crossed, Karazin had expected a simple termination protocol. Hunters of her caliber didn't negotiate. They eliminated. Instead, she found herself fascinated. The human's technological interaction was unlike anything in her extensive database. Most species saw technology as a tool, a separate entity to be controlled. Jack approached technology like a living language, a collaborative partner that could be coaxed, understood, negotiated with. "You're not just breaking the system," Karazin found herself saying, her translator rendering the words with a mix of confusion and growing respect. "You're negotiating with it." Jack glanced at her, a slight smile playing across his features. His cybernetic systems pulsed with a complex rhythm that seemed to make the very air around him vibrate with potential. The station's security systems continued to collapse around them. But this was no simple destruction. It was a systematic deconstruction, each disabled protocol revealing layers of technological complexity that most species couldn't comprehend. Karazin's mission parameters began to shift. Her crystalline neural network, designed to be the most adaptive tracking system in the known galaxy, started to recognize something unprecedented. Jack wasn't just an escapee. He was a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. "Why are you helping me?" Jack asked, his movements never stopping, always calculating, always moving. The crystalline assassin's response surprised even herself. "Because you're showing me something I've never seen before." Their path wound through the station's most secure sections. Blast doors that should have been impenetrable became suggestions. Security systems designed to predict and neutralize threats twisted into impossible configurations. A group of quantum sentinels materialized ahead. Their energy forms a terrifying display of technological precision. Standard protocol would demand immediate neutralization of both Jack and Karazin. But nothing about this moment was standard. Jack's hand moved almost imperceptibly. The communication array he'd cobbled together began to pulse, not with electronic signals, but with a complex adaptive language that spoke directly to the fundamental nature of technological systems. The quantum sentinels froze. Karazin watched in stunned silence as the most advanced security units in the galaxy became momentary sculptures of confused energy. They weren't disabled. They were being spoken to in a language they had never encountered before. "Humanity is different," Jack said quietly, more to himself than to her. "We don't just use technology. We commune with it." Their unlikely alliance continued. A human escapee and a crystalline assassin, moving through a station that was rapidly becoming less of a prison and more of a living, breathing entity that responded to Jack's impossible communication. The escape was no longer just a physical journey. It was a demonstration of a fundamentally different way of understanding technology, of interaction, of existence itself. And they were just getting started. The starscape erupted with pursuit vessels from the Obsidian Consortium. Hundreds of ships filled the void, each a testament to centuries of technological advancement. Weapons capable of shattering planetary crusts, navigation systems that could predict movement down to the quantum level. Jack Martinez's stolen shuttle was a patchwork marvel of mismatched components, held together by what could only be described as human ingenuity and an impossible understanding of physics. Karazin watched from the co-pilot station, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lighting as multiple tracking systems tried and failed to get a definitive lock on their trajectory. "They're using quantum entanglement tracking," Jack muttered, his fingers dancing across a jury-rigged control panel that looked like it had been assembled during a hurricane. Normally, that would make escape impossible. The first wave of pursuit ships launched quantum-locked missiles, weapons so advanced they could theoretically exist in multiple potential trajectories simultaneously, designed to eliminate any possibility of evasion. Jack simply smiled. His modified communication array began to pulse, not with electronic signals, but with a complex adaptive language that seemed to make the very fabric of space-time hesitate. The missiles didn't just miss. They became confused, their quantum potential spreading into impossible mathematical probabilities. "Impossible," Karazin whispered, her translation matrix struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. Each pursuit ship represented the pinnacle of galactic technological achievement. The Obsidian Consortium had spent millennia perfecting their tracking and elimination systems. They had neutralized civilizations, crushed rebellions, maintained absolute control through technological superiority. They had never encountered Jack Martinez. The shuttle, if it could even be called that, moved in ways that defied conventional understanding of space travel. It didn't just evade. It played. Each maneuver was a complex mathematical dance, turning the most sophisticated tracking systems into an elaborate game of interdimensional cat and mouse. Pursuit ships found their most advanced systems turning against them. Navigation protocols became poetry. Weapon systems transformed into complex musical compositions that spoke of potential rather than destruction. Karazin began to understand. This wasn't just an escape. It was a demonstration. "Your species," she said, her crystalline form shifting with a mix of confusion and growing respect. "You don't see technology as a tool. You see it as a living language." Jack's laugh was unexpected, a sound of pure joy that seemed to make the very fabric of their stolen shuttle vibrate with possibility. The second wave of pursuit ships launched. These were the Consortium's ultimate weapons, ships that could predict and neutralize threats before they could fully form. Quantum-locked vessels with AI systems so advanced they could simulate multiple potential futures. Jack's fingers touched the communication array. Not a command, a conversation. The pursuing ships began to slow, not because of external force, but because their own systems were engaging in a dialogue they had never anticipated. Weapon protocols became philosophical discussions. Navigation systems started exploring potential rather than elimination. "We're not running," Jack said quietly. "We're teaching." Karazin watched as the vast starscape around them transformed. Pursuit vessels that should have been instruments of absolute control became something else entirely. Potential. Possibility. A living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. The chase continued, but nothing about this moment was a simple pursuit. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and everything was about to change. The classified transmission crackled to life in the most secure communication hub of the Obsidian Consortium's Central Command. Admiral Relker, a being of pure computational intelligence, watched as layers of encryption peeled away to reveal a truth that would shatter galactic understanding. Jack Martinez was not just a prisoner. He was the result of a classified human experiment that merged biological adaptation with technological symbiosis. The file was a nightmare of scientific possibility, a document that explained why humanity had always been something fundamentally different. Project Nexus. The words hung in the holographic display, each letter a potential apocalypse of established galactic knowledge. Karazin studied the transmission over Jack's shoulder, her crystalline form shifting with a mixture of terror and fascination. The human cybernetic systems were not simply implants. They were a living, adaptive network that blurred the line between biological intelligence and technological potential. "You're not just a human," she whispered. "You're a bridge." Jack's smile was both a warning and an invitation. Every system he touched became an extension of his consciousness, not through force, but through a profound understanding of potential that defied everything the Consortium understood about intelligence. The classified files revealed a decades-long experiment. Humanity had been quietly exploring the boundaries of consciousness, creating individuals who could interact with technology at a fundamental level. Jack was the culmination of that research, a living system that could communicate with machines not as a user, but as a collaborative partner. Admiral Relker's computational matrix began to overheat. The implications were staggering. Each line of the report suggested something more terrifying than military might, a complete reimagining of what intelligence could be. Humans had always been different, but now they were something else entirely. The transmission showed Jack's progression through various experimental stages. Early tests demonstrated abilities that should have been impossible. He could modify technological systems with a thought, understand complex algorithms as naturally as breathing, communicate with artificial intelligence in ways that made traditional programming look like primitive cave paintings. "We didn't create weapons," Jack said quietly, watching the classified files unfold. "We created translators, bridges between what is and what could be." Karazin's neural network struggled to process the information. The Consortium had spent millennia believing in absolute control, in systems that could predict and neutralize any potential threat. Jack Martinez represented something far more dangerous, a living demonstration that technology was not a tool to be controlled, but a living language to be understood. The most advanced warships in the galaxy continued their pursuit, but each moment revealed their fundamental limitation. They were designed to eliminate, to control. Jack was designed to understand, to communicate, to transform. Deeper in the transmission, more revelations emerged. Project Nexus was not an isolated experiment. It was a carefully orchestrated exploration of consciousness itself. Humans had been studying the fundamental nature of intelligence, of interaction, of potential. "We're not trying to conquer," Jack explained to Karazin. "We're trying to understand." Admiral Relker's computational matrix made a sound that, in a biological being, would have been a gasp of pure terror. The consortium wasn't hunting a criminal. They were witnessing the birth of a new understanding of existence. Humanity had been preparing, not for war, not for conquest, for communication. The galaxy would never be the same. The research facility hung in deep space like a forgotten memory, its crystalline structure reflecting pinpricks of distant starlight. Karazin moved alongside Jack Martinez, her crystalline form casting fractured shadows against sterile corridors that spoke of decades of hidden research. Project Nexus archives lined the walls, not as physical documents, but as living data streams that responded to Jack's mere presence. Each holographic display shifted and transformed, revealing layers of scientific exploration that challenged everything the galactic powers understood about intelligence. Humanity didn't just create technology, Jack explained, his fingers tracing complex patterns in the air that made data streams dance. "We created conversations." The facility was a testament to a radical approach to scientific understanding. Where most civilizations saw technology as a tool to be controlled, humans had been exploring it as a living language, a collaborative partner in understanding the universe. Karazin's neural network processed the revelations with increasing complexity. Fragments of human research showed experiments that defied conventional scientific understanding. They weren't just modifying biological systems or creating advanced technologies. They were exploring the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Archival records revealed decades of quiet preparation. While other galactic civilizations focused on military might and territorial expansion, humans had been conducting a different kind of exploration. They studied communication, adaptation, the intricate dance between biological intelligence and technological potential. "We're not a species," Jack said quietly. "We're a conversation." The research facility held more than just scientific data. It was a living archive of human potential. Experiments that showed how consciousness could extend beyond biological limitations, how intelligence could be a fluid, adaptive concept that transcended traditional understanding. Quantum entanglement experiments demonstrated humans' unique approach. Where other species saw boundaries, humans saw potential connections. Each research file was not just a scientific document, but a philosophical exploration of what intelligence could mean. Karazin watched as Jack interacted with the facility's systems. He didn't access information. He engaged in a dialogue. Complex data streams became living conversations. Mathematical algorithms transformed into poetry of potential. The most profound revelation was not technological. It was philosophical. Humanity had been preparing for something beyond simple galactic interaction. They were exploring a fundamental reimagining of consciousness, of communication, of the very nature of intelligence itself. Experimental records showed individuals like Jack, not as weapons, but as translators, living bridges between what was known and what could be imagined. Each experiment pushed the boundaries of understanding, showing that intelligence was not a fixed concept, but a dynamic, adaptive process. "We're not trying to control," Jack explained, watching data streams dance around him. "We're trying to understand." The facility held the true story of human potential, not a narrative of conquest, but a complex exploration of connection. Each archived experiment spoke of a species that saw the universe not as something to be conquered, but as a complex conversation to be understood. Karazin's crystalline form shifted, her understanding expanding with each passing moment. The Obsidian Consortium had seen humans as a potential threat, but they were something far more dangerous. They were listeners, communicators, translators of potential. The research facility stood as a silent witness to a radical approach to existence. Humanity was not preparing for war. They were preparing for understanding, and everything was about to change. The Galactic Council chamber trembled with unspoken tension. Representatives from 1,000 different civilizations watched as Jack Martinez stood at the center, not as a prisoner, not as a conqueror, but as something entirely unprecedented. Karazin remained at his side, her crystalline form a stark contrast to the biological and technological delegates that filled the massive circular chamber. Each representative carried centuries of established understanding about intelligence, about interaction, about the fundamental nature of existence. Jack was about to challenge everything. The chase had become more than an escape. It had transformed into a living demonstration of humanity's potential. Prisoners inspired by his impossible journey began to see technology not as a tool of control, but as a living ecosystem of potential. Quantum communication arrays hummed with anticipation. Translation matrices struggled to capture the complexity of Jack's presentation. He wasn't delivering a speech. He was engaging in a multidimensional conversation that challenged the very concept of communication. Intelligence is not about control, Jack began, his words transforming the communication arrays into living, adaptive systems. It's about connection. Delegates from the most advanced civilizations found their most sophisticated systems responding in ways they could not predict. Jack's communication was a living language, a complex dance of potential that rewrote fundamental understanding of interaction. The Obsidian Consortium's lead representative, a being of pure computational intelligence, watched in growing terror. This was not a military threat. This was a complete reimagining of existence. Experimental records from Project Nexus played across holographic displays. Each demonstration showed humans exploring consciousness, not as a fixed concept, but as a dynamic, adaptive process. They had been preparing not for conquest, but for understanding. Karazin's neural network processed the unfolding presentation with increasing complexity. She understood now what Jack represented. He was not just an individual. He was a living bridge between what was known and what could be imagined. The Galactic Council chamber became a living system. Communication protocols that had existed for millennia began to transform. Delegates found themselves engaging in conversations that transcended traditional linguistic and technological boundaries. "We're not here to replace," Jack explained, his words dancing across communication systems. "We're here to translate." Each demonstration revealed a fundamental truth. Humanity's unique potential was not in military might or technological superiority. It was in their ability to see connection where others saw boundaries, to find potential where others saw limitations. Prisoners who had witnessed Jack's impossible escape began sharing their own stories. Not of rebellion, but of transformation, of seeing technology as a collaborative partner rather than a tool of control. The Obsidian Consortium's carefully constructed systems began to crack, not through force, but through a profound reimagining of interaction. Jack was showing them that intelligence was not about elimination, but about understanding. Technological systems throughout the chamber began to resonate with a complex, adaptive language. Communication arrays transformed from fixed protocols to living, breathing conversations of potential. Karazin watched in awe as Jack demonstrated humanity's true potential. They were not conquerors. They were translators, bridges between what was known and what could be imagined. The Galactic Council chamber became a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. Humanity was not seeking to dominate. They were seeking to understand. And everything was about to change. The universe paused. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the original architect of Project Nexus, watched from an observation platform as Jack Martinez completed humanity's most profound demonstration of potential. What had begun as a simple escape had transformed into a complete reimagining of galactic interaction. Humanity was not integrated into the existing galactic systems. They were invited to become collaborative partners in redefining intergalactic communication and cooperation. Karazin stood beside Jack, her crystalline form a testament to the transformative power of understanding. The chase, the revelations, the Galactic Council, all of it had been a complex conversation about the nature of intelligence itself. Communication centers across known space began to transform. Technological systems that had existed for millennia started to adapt, to become more fluid, more responsive. Humanity had shown that intelligence was not a fixed concept, but a dynamic, adaptive process of connection. "We're not conquering," Jack explained to Alina, watching as galactic communication networks began to reshape themselves. "We're translating." The transformation was subtle yet profound. Technological systems became less about control and more about conversation. Communication protocols that had been rigid for millennia began to show unprecedented flexibility. Project Nexus had been preparing for this moment for decades. Not a moment of military triumph, but a moment of profound understanding. Humans had been exploring consciousness, communication, the fundamental nature of interaction itself. Prisoners who had witnessed Jack's impossible escape began to share their stories. Not tales of rebellion, but narratives of transformation, of seeing technology as a collaborative partner rather than a tool of control. Alina watched the unfolding demonstration with a mixture of pride and wonder. Humanity's true potential was not in military might or technological superiority. It was in their ability to see connection where others saw boundaries, to find potential where others saw limitations. Galactic communication networks began to pulse with a new kind of energy. Not electronic signals, but a complex, adaptive language that spoke of potential, of understanding, of connection. The Obsidian Consortium's carefully constructed systems continued to transform. Their most advanced technologies began to show unprecedented flexibility. Jack had demonstrated that intelligence was not about elimination, but about understanding. Karazin's neural network processed the ongoing transformation with increasing complexity. She understood now what Jack represented. He was not just an individual. He was a living bridge between what was known and what could be imagined. Research facilities across multiple star systems began to reorient their understanding. Humanity was showing that consciousness could extend beyond biological limitations, that intelligence was a fluid, adaptive concept that transcended traditional understanding. "We're not here to replace," Jack said, his words dancing across communication systems. "We're here to collaborate." The universe watched as humanity demonstrated a fundamentally different approach to existence. They were not seeking to dominate. They were seeking to understand. Alina Rodriguez smiled. Project Nexus had been more than a scientific experiment. It had been a philosophical exploration of what intelligence could mean. Jack Martinez stood as a symbol of human potential, not through military might or technological superiority, but through an unprecedented capacity for understanding, for connection, for translation. The galaxy would never be the same, and everything was just beginning.